The eviction notice hit my chest at 8:47 a.m. on a Tuesday. Pink paper, official-looking seal, 72 hours to vacate. The problem? I owned the house, paid cash, no mortgage, just me, my coffee, and the deed in my filing cabinet. The woman who delivered it? Brenda Colwich, our HOA president. Late 50s, helmet of blonde highlights, leopard print cardigan that screamed, "I need to speak to your manager." She had 2 hired security guards flanking her like she was serving a warrant. "This neighborhood has standards," she announced loud enough for my neighbors to hear, "and you clearly don't meet them." I didn't argue, didn't even stand up, just took another sip of coffee and smiled. Because what Brenda didn't know, what she was about to learn the most expensive way possible, would destroy her completely. Drop a comment. What would you do if someone tried to steal your own home? And tell me where you're watching from. HOA horror stories know no borders. Let me back up. My name's Garrett, and I'm probably not who you'd expect to own 7 properties by age 45. I spent 12 years in the Marines, 2 deployments, more sand in my boots than I care to remember, and a back injury that ended my career but taught me something valuable. Adapt or die. The Corps gave me a skill set, a modest pension, and a VA loan I intended to use wisely. 2019, I bought my first house in Pinecrest Meadows, a planned community just outside Charlotte, North Carolina. 3-bed ranch, nothing fancy, but it was mine. The day I closed, I stood in that empty living room and felt something I hadn't felt in years. Peace. The kind that comes from owning a piece of ground nobody can take from you. Turns out I loved renovation work. Therapeutic, really. Ripping out old carpet, patching drywall, the satisfying bite of a drill sinking screws into fresh lumber. I'd spend weekends at Home Depot, learning from YouTube videos, turning my house into something better than what the builder left behind. Then I discovered something interesting. Foreclosures, estate sales, distressed properties right here in Pinecrest Meadows, selling for 60 cents on the dollar. Over 4 years, I quietly bought 6 more, all rentals, all well-maintained, all generating income that let me sleep easy at night. I kept it quiet. Used an LLC, Summit Holdings NC, generic enough that nobody connected it to me. My tenants were good people. A teacher, a nurse, a retired couple, a young family. Properties stayed clean, rent came in on time, and I stayed under the radar. Pinecrest Meadows itself? Pretty standard suburban development. 140 homes, built mid-2000s, mostly middle-class families and retirees trying to enjoy their golden years. The HOA was mandatory, $85 a month for lawn care in common areas, a pool nobody used, and a clubhouse that smelled like old coffee and broken dreams. For years, the HOA board was essentially invisible. Previous president was this retired accountant who rubber-stamped everything and moved to Florida in 2023. The vice president didn't want the job. Nobody else ran, except Brenda. Brenda Colwich rolled into that board election like she was running for Congress, promised to restore neighborhood pride and maintain property values. She won with 19 votes, 12% turnout if that tells you anything about how much people cared. I first met her on a July afternoon so hot the asphalt shimmered. I was replacing my mailbox post, the old one had rotted through, when I heard heels clicking on my driveway. Not sneakers, not flip-flops, heels. In 90-degree heat. Brenda appeared like a mirage. Blonde highlights catching the sun, leopard print cardigan despite the temperature, and a smile that didn't reach her eyes. The smell hit me first. Some floral perfume so strong it overpowered the scent of cut grass and fresh concrete. "You must be Garrett," she said, extending a hand with nails painted coral pink. "I'm Brenda Colwich, your new HOA president. Just wanted to introduce myself and make sure you're aware of our community standards." I shook her hand. Firm grip, practiced. "Nice to meet you. Standards?" "Oh, you know, lawn height, trash can visibility, that sort of thing. We've let things slide for too long." Her eyes drifted to my truck, a 2015 Ford F-150, work vehicle, nothing fancy. "That's not a commercial vehicle, is it?" "Personal use," I said. 3/4 ton, no signage. She made a note on her clipboard, actual clipboard. "Well, I'll be in touch. Welcome to the new Pinecrest Meadows." But she clicked away, leaving behind the fading scent of flowers and something else. Trouble. The kind you can feel in your gut, the kind the Marines trained me to recognize. I should have trusted that instinct. 2 weeks later, the first violation notice arrived. The notice came certified mail, always a bad sign. Thick envelope, official HOA letterhead, the works. Notice of violation. Commercial vehicle parked in residential driveway in violation of CCNR Section 4.7b. You have 10 days to cure this violation or face fines of $50 per day. I read it twice. Then I pulled out my copy of the CCNRs, the covenants, conditions, and restrictions that govern the HOA. Every homeowner gets one at closing. Most people never read them. I had, twice. Once when I bought the house and again at 2 in the morning when I couldn't sleep. Section 4.7b prohibited commercial vehicles over 1 ton or bearing commercial signage. My truck was 3/4 ton. No logos, no lettering, no company name, just a slightly dusty blue F-150 I used for Home Depot runs. I took photos, typed up a polite email to Brenda with attachments, cited the specific language, and hit send. Her response came the next morning, exactly 4 sentences. The board has reviewed your appeal and determined that the violation stands. The HOA retains discretionary authority in all enforcement matters. You have 8 days remaining to comply. Discretionary authority, the 2 most dangerous words in HOA governance. I attended the next board meeting on a muggy August evening, the clubhouse air conditioning wheezing against 90-degree heat. I expected a panel, maybe 5 people, some discussion, actual democracy. Instead, I found Brenda, alone, sitting at a folding table with a wooden gavel that still had the Amazon price sticker on the handle. "Where's the rest of the board?" I asked. "The treasurer and secretary positions are currently vacant," she smiled. "I'm handling all board functions until we can recruit qualified volunteers." 1 person. She was the entire board. Judge, jury, and executioner wrapped in leopard print. I presented my case, photos, truck specs, the exact CCNR language. Took maybe 3 minutes. Brenda didn't even pretend to look at my evidence. The violation stands. Next item on the agenda. Through the clubhouse window, I noticed my neighbor's driveway 2 streets over. Craig Dietrich, one of Brenda's book club friends. In his driveway sat a Chevy Silverado 1500, same weight class as my truck. 0 violations. "What about Dietrich's Silverado?" I asked. Brenda's smile could have cut glass. "Mr. Dietrich is a valued, cooperative resident who understands what community standards mean." Translation: You don't belong here. The Marine Corps taught me one critical lesson. When someone shows you who they are, believe them the first time. Brenda had just shown me exactly who she was. Over the next 6 weeks, violation notices arrived like clockwork. Grass too tall, I measured, 2.7 inches under the 3-inch limit. Garbage can visible too long. Unapproved paint color on my front door, same builder beige from 2010. Wind chime causing noise disturbance. Garden gnome exceeding height limits, measured at 11.5 inches, ½ inch under the 12-inch maximum. Each notice threatened $50 per day in fines. By October, her phantom counter hit $850. My mail carrier started giving me sympathy nods. "What'd you do to piss off the HOA lady?" she asked one morning. "Existed," I said. I hired Consuela Verne, a solo practitioner who specialized in HOA disputes. Sharp woman, $250 an hour, worth every penny. She drafted a cease and desist letter citing selective enforcement, lack of due process, and harassment patterns. Brenda's response came from the HOA's big downtown law firm. "Mr. Garrett's allegations are meritless. The board reserves all enforcement rights. Further frivolous correspondence will be met with appropriate legal action." Then another violation. My mailbox post was faded and deteriorated. It was pressure-treated cedar, naturally weathered to that silvery gray color landscapers charge extra for. It was supposed to look like that. The fine counter hit $2,200. Consuela warned me, "You're legally right on every single violation, but HOA litigation is expensive and slow. Sometimes the smart move is just to comply." But I'd spent 12 years in the Corps learning one truth. Bullies don't stop when you give them what they want. They stop when you make them stop. I remembered reading about North Carolina Statute 47F3 118 years ago when researching investment properties. Property owners can request HOA records with 10 days written notice. The HOA has to comply. Refusal means penalties, court orders, even personal liability for board members. I drafted a formal request, meeting minutes, financial statements, contracts, violation records for the past 3 years, sent it certified mail. Brenda's response came on day 9. All financial documents are currently undergoing audit and unavailable. Other materials will be provided when the audit is complete, estimated 60 to 90 days. 60 to 90 days. For records that should have been ready to go. Translation: I'm hiding something. I posted in the neighborhood Facebook group. Anyone else dealing with HOA violations lately? 47 comments in 3 hours. Iris, my 70-something neighbor, messaged privately. Brenda cited me for weeds. They're native pollinator plants I've had for 5 years. I saw her at the mailbox the next day, hands trembling as she clutched another pink notice. The Nguyen family got dinged for a portable basketball hoop they only used on weekends. Meanwhile, Brenda's book club friends had RVs parked for months, dead lawns, sagging fences. Not a single violation notice among them. I ran into Iris at the hardware store. She looked exhausted, voice dropping to a whisper. Brenda keeps mentioning a buyer for my house. Said her cousin runs a flipping company. Her hands shook as she gripped her purse. That's when it clicked. This wasn't petty tyranny. This was a scheme. Harass people until they sell, steer properties to connected buyers, collect kickbacks. I drove home with cold fury settling in my chest. Game on. Late November, the pink paper finally arrived. Not a violation notice this time, an eviction notice. The one from the opening of this story, the one Brenda slapped on my chest at 8:47 on a Tuesday morning. Notice to vacate premises. Due to unpaid fines totaling $1,200 constituting material breach of HOA covenants, you are hereby required to vacate the property located at 428 Birchwood Drive within 72 hours. Failure to comply will result in forcible removal and additional legal penalties. It had an official-looking seal, some clip art county emblem she'd downloaded. Referenced North Carolina Statute 47F3166, except she'd misquoted it. The statute covered HOA liens, not evictions. Two completely different things. Here's what she either didn't know or didn't care about. HOAs can place liens on properties for unpaid dues or fines, sure, but they can't just evict an owner. That requires foreclosure, a lengthy legal process involving courts, notices, redemption periods. You can't just show up with rent-a-cops and a fake document. But the notice looked official enough to scare someone who didn't know better. Brenda stood in my driveway with 2 security guards she'd hired, polo shirts with Pinnacle Security Services embroidered on the chest, earpieces that probably weren't connected to anything. The morning sun caught her hairspray, creating a blonde halo effect that would have been angelic if her eyes weren't so cold. The smell of diesel exhaust hung in the air from their idling van. One guard shifted his weight, clearly uncomfortable. The other stared straight ahead like he was guarding Fort Knox instead of harassing a guy drinking coffee. I'm sure this is just a misunderstanding, Brenda said, voice dripping with fake concern. But the lawyers will sort it out. You should probably start packing. I took another sip of coffee, let the silence stretch, watched her smile falter just a fraction. I'll take it under advisement, I said finally. She blinked. Excuse me? I said I'll take it under advisement. Have a nice day, Brenda. I walked inside and closed the door. Watched through the window as she stood there, mouth slightly open, before clicking back to her car in those ridiculous heels. First call, Consuela. She answered on the second ring. Please tell me you're looking at what I think you're looking at, I said. If you're looking at a fake eviction notice, then yes. Email me a photo. I heard her laugh, dark, humorless, when the image came through. Garrett, this is fraud. She's impersonating legal authority. You could file criminal charges right now. Not yet, I said. I want to see how far she'll go. Second move, I posted the fake eviction notice to the Pinecrest Meadows Facebook group. Just the image, no commentary, caption. Anyone else getting these? The comments exploded. 47 in the first 3 hours. 12 other families shared similar harassment stories. Bogus fines, threatening letters, pressure to sell. Brenda's allies called me a troublemaker, accused me of stirring drama and hurting property values. But the neutral residents started asking questions. Good questions. Hard questions. One supporter, Dell, a retired electrician with arms like tree trunks and a mustache that belonged in a 1980s cop show, sent me a private message. Check the HOA financials. Something's off. I've been here 9 years, and we used to have money for actual improvements. Now Brenda claims we're broke. I pulled up my records request again. Still no response after 60 days, well past the legal deadline. Time to dig deeper. North Carolina requires HOAs that elect certain tax treatment to file Form 1120H with the IRS, a simple return showing income and expenses. And here's the beautiful part I'd learned years ago when researching investment properties. Those filings are public record. You can search them on the IRS website if you know where to look. I found Pinecrest Meadows HOA's filing within 20 minutes. The numbers made my coffee go cold. Total dues collected, 2022-2023, approximately $142,000. That's 140 homes at $85 a month for 2 years, roughly. Math checked out. Total expenses claimed for landscaping, $89,000. I called the actual landscaping company listed on the checks, Greene County Lawn Care, asked for their contract amount. Pinecrest Meadows? Yeah, we do their common areas, $31,000 a year, same rate since 2020. $89,000 claimed, $31,000 actual. That left $58,000 unaccounted for. I spent that night cross-referencing every check image in the records I'd finally received. Consuela had threatened a lawsuit, and suddenly the audit completed. Each payment to Greene County Lawn Care was actually made out to a different company, Pinecrest Property Solutions, LLC. Google search, Pinecrest Property Solutions, North Carolina. Registered agent, Kenneth Colwich, Brenda's brother. I sat back in my kitchen chair, coffee long forgotten, laptop screen glowing blue in the darkness. The smell of burned coffee filled the room. I'd left the pot on too long. $58,000 funneled to a shell company run by Brenda's family. My phone buzzed. Dell again. Emergency HOA meeting scheduled for next week. Brenda's calling a vote to raise dues 40% to cover legal fees defending against frivolous challenges. Translation: you. Another text, this one from Iris. She's going to make you the villain. Be careful. I texted back. Let her try. Because what Brenda didn't know, what she was about to discover, was that I'd been preparing for this moment since that first ridiculous truck violation. I opened my property records folder, 6 deeds all held under Summit Holdings NC LLC, 6 properties in Pinecrest Meadows that nobody knew I owned, including 349 Cypress Lane, Brenda's rental. I pulled up her lease agreement. Standard 1-year term, signed 14 months ago. She'd gone month to month after the initial period. Current status, 2 months behind on rent, November and December unpaid. My property manager had been lenient, not knowing about the HOA drama. I called him. The tenant at 349 Cypress, send the standard 10-day pay or quit notice. If she doesn't pay, we file eviction. You sure? It's almost the holidays. I'm sure. Business is business. I didn't tell him who the tenant was. Didn't need to. The process would play out exactly the way it was supposed to. Legal, documented, ironclad. Brenda wanted to play eviction games with fake notices and intimidation tactics? Fine. Let me show her what a real eviction looks like. The emergency meeting notice hit mailboxes exactly 48 hours before the scheduled date, the legal minimum under North Carolina HOA law. Brenda knew exactly how to skirt the rules without breaking them, but she also sent something extra. A glossy flyer, full color, printed on heavy cardstock with a fake patriotic red, white, blue border, protecting our community from outside agitators. Below the headline, a photo of my truck, unflattering angle, emphasis on a minor door ding, captioned, "Commercial eyesore degrading property values." The text implied I was some faceless investor type who doesn't care about neighborhood values and whose frivolous lawsuits were costing the HOA thousands in legal fees. Not a single word was technically libelous. She'd threaded that needle carefully, but the message was clear. I was the enemy, the outsider, the problem. My mail carrier handed it to me with an apologetic grimace. She mailed these to every house, bulk rate. I held the flyer up to the afternoon light. The cardstock alone probably cost $2 per unit, times 140 homes. She'd dropped almost $300 on a smear campaign. HOA funds? Her own money? At this point, the line was so blurred it didn't matter. The neighborhood split predictably. About 60% ignored the flyer entirely, working people who didn't have time for subdivision drama. 25%, mostly Brenda's book club crew and the golf course retirees, started parroting her talking points at the mailbox and the pool. But 15%, the people she'd harassed, the ones paying attention, organized a counter-campaign. Email chain titled Know the Truth with links to the financial discrepancies, screenshots of selective enforcement, testimonials from Iris and the Nguyen's. I stayed out of it publicly. Let them fight that battle. Meanwhile, I had a different move to make. I invited Dell, Iris, and the Nguyen family to my house on a Sunday afternoon. Spread out the property records on my kitchen table like a general planning an invasion. The smell of Iris's homemade gingerbread filled the room. She'd brought cookies because even in the middle of a war, some people can't help being kind. I need to show you something, I said. Pulled out the deeds. 6 properties, all held under Summit Holdings NC LLC. Dell's eyes widened. You own 6 houses here? 6 rentals, all maintained, all rented to good people. Brenda doesn't know. Iris picked up one of the deeds, reading carefully. Why tell us now? Because I need your help, and because it's time to stop playing defense. I explained the math. 6 properties out of 140 total units equals 4.3% ownership. In HOA governance, voting rights typically run 1 vote per property. That gave me 6 votes in any board election or major decision. More importantly, North Carolina law allows any owner to demand a special recall election with just a 10% petition. That's 14 signatures out of 140 homes. Dell grinned. We can get 14 signatures before dinner. Already have them, I said, sliding the petition across the table. 17 signatures, actually. I'd been collecting quietly for 3 weeks. Mr. Nguyen leaned forward. When do we call the election? After the emergency meeting. Let Brenda have her moment. Let her think she's winning. Then Iris said something that changed everything. You know she rents, right? Brenda doesn't own her house. Lives in one of those Ashford models on Cypress Lane. My brain stuttered. Cypress Lane. One of my streets. I pulled up the LLC property spreadsheet on my laptop, scrolled to the addresses. 349 Cypress Lane, Ashford model, purchased at estate sale March 2022. Owner, Summit Holdings NC. Tenant, Brenda Colwich. Lease signed May 2023. The laugh that came out of me was sharp, disbelieving. Dell looked at me like I'd lost my mind. What? He asked. She's my tenant. I turned the laptop around. Brenda Colwich, HOA president, terror of Pinecrest Meadows, rents her house from me. The room went silent. Then Iris started laughing, a sound like wind chimes, delicate and slightly unhinged. Oh, she said, wiping her eyes. Oh, that's perfect. It was perfect. Almost too perfect. I reviewed Brenda's lease that night after everyone left. Standard residential agreement, 1-year initial term, now month to month. Rent, $1,850 month. Current status per my property manager's records. 2 months delinquent, November and December unpaid. Total owed, $3,700. The lease included a standard clause prohibiting conducting business from the premises without prior written consent. Brenda had been using her rental as the HOA's unofficial office, storing records there, hosting board meetings in her dining room, using the address on official HOA letterhead. Clear lease violation. I called my property manager. Draft a 10-day pay or quit notice for 349 Cypress. Standard language, but don't serve it yet. Hold it until I give the word. You sure about this? Eviction right before Christmas? She's 2 months behind. This is business. I didn't mention who she was, didn't need to. The process would unfold exactly as designed. Legal, documented, inevitable. But I wouldn't serve the notice yet. That card stayed in my pocket, because the emergency meeting was in 3 days, and I wanted to see exactly how far Brenda would push before I pushed back. The night before the meeting, Brenda sent one final email blast to all residents. Tomorrow we vote to protect our neighborhood. Every voice matters. I hit reply all. Kept it simple. I agree. See everyone at 7 p.m. Dell forwarded me a screenshot 20 minutes later. Brenda's group text to her book club. He won't show. Cowards never do. I set my alarm for 6:30 a.m., laid out my clothes, printed 3 copies of the financial audit summary. Then I slept like a baby. Brenda thought she knew who she was dealing with. She had no idea. December 12th, 7 p.m. The clubhouse smelled like stale coffee and lemon floor cleaner. Metal folding chairs scraped against linoleum as 48 residents filed in, the highest turnout in Pinecrest Meadows history. Brenda sat at the head table with her wooden gavel. Wearing a navy blazer like this was a corporate board meeting. Her smile was pure confidence. She had her people front left. The book club crew, 12 strong, nodding along before anything even started. Dell and Iris sat scattered among the neutral crowd, smart. Didn't want to look like an organized opposition yet. I took a seat in the back corner. Brenda's eyes flicked to me, surprise registering for just a second before the smile snapped back into place. She banged the gavel. Let's keep this brief. First agenda item. Vote to raise dues 40%, effective January 1st, to cover increased legal and operational costs. Dell stood. Point of order. Where's the budget justification? Legal costs, Brenda said smoothly, which Mr. Garrett's frivolous complaints have caused. I rose slowly. I'd like to see an itemized invoice for those legal costs. That's confidential attorney-client material. Actually, I said, keeping my voice calm, under North Carolina Statute 47F31118, HOA financial records are member property. I have copies. I walked to the front, connected my laptop to the clubhouse TV. Pulled up the first image. Check copies showing payments to Pinecrest Property Solutions LLC for landscaping services. You claimed $89,000 in landscaping costs over 2 years. The actual contractor charges $31,000 annually. That's a $58,000 discrepancy. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Next slide. Business registration showing Kenneth Kulwich as registered agent for Pinecrest Property Solutions. Kenneth Kulwich, your brother Brenda. Her face went red. Sweat beaded on her upper lip, foundation cracking at the edges. Kenneth provides consulting services. Project management. What projects? There's no contract on file, no invoices, just checks made out to a shell company. The neutral residents leaned forward now, smartphones out, recording. I move to table the dues increase, I said, and call for a full independent audit of all HOA finances. Voice vote, overwhelming ayes. Brenda tried to gavel it down, but residents shouted her into silence. She stood, hands shaking. Fine, we'll audit. But first let's address the real problem. Absentee investors who don't live here and don't care about our community. She pointed at me. He owns rental properties. Multiple. Probably a slumlord. We should ban rentals entirely. Murmurs of agreement from her faction. I stayed calm. I do own rentals, 6 properties in this neighborhood, all well maintained. My tenants are a teacher, a nurse, a retired couple, young families. 0 complaints. I pulled up the county GIS map, highlighted my 6 properties. Under our HOA bylaws, each property gets 1 vote, which means I control 6 votes in any board matter. Let that sink in for 3 seconds. Which is why I'm calling for a special election to recall the current board and elect new leadership. Per statute, I need 10% of owners to petition. I have 14%, 20 signatures right here. I handed the petition stack to Brenda. The color drained from her face. You can't do this, she whispered, then louder. This is my board. It's the members' board, I said, and you violated your fiduciary duty. The election is happening. Brenda grabbed her purse, knocked her chair over, and stormed out. The clubhouse door slammed hard enough to rattle the windows. Silence. Then someone started clapping. Then another. Within seconds, half the room was applauding. But I hadn't played my final card yet. That one was still in my pocket, waiting. December 13th through 30th became a blur of coffee, spreadsheets, and quiet coordination. I convened what Dell started calling the kitchen cabinet at my house 2 days after the meeting. Dell brought his electrical expertise and union organizer instincts. Iris brought institutional memory. She'd lived here longer than anyone and remembered when the HOA actually functioned. The Nguyens brought tech skills and social media savvy. Consuela Verne brought legal strategy and a flask of bourbon she didn't apologize for. The smell of Iris's homemade gingerbread filled my kitchen, mixing with the wood smoke from my fireplace. Outside, December wind rattled the windows. First priority, Consuela said, flipping through her notepad, is fortifying your legal position before Brenda tries something desperate. She'd already filed an ethics complaint with the North Carolina Real Estate Commission over the fake eviction notice. Turns out threatening legal action without a law license is a crime. Unauthorized practice of law. Could result in fines, even criminal charges in extreme cases, something I'd read about years ago when researching tenant-landlord law, never thinking I'd need to use it. She also drafted a new cease and desist, this time alleging fraud, embezzlement, and selective enforcement with prejudice. Send it to both Brenda and the HOA's downtown law firm. Second priority, Dell said, tapping the financial documents spread across my table, is nailing down exactly how much she stole. He'd connected me with Phyllis, a retired IRS auditor who did consulting work on the side. Sharp woman, late 60s, had forgotten more about forensic accounting than most people ever learn. Phyllis spent a week reviewing 3 years of HOA records. Her findings made my blood pressure spike. $58,000 to the fake landscaping vendor, Brenda's brother, $12,000 in office supplies charged to the HOA credit card, actual purchases at Home Goods and TJ Maxx, Brenda's personal shopping sprees, $7,000 legal retainer paid to a firm that never actually invoiced the HOA for work, kickback to Brenda's friend's husband, an attorney for fake consulting. Total misappropriation, roughly $77,000 over 3 years. "She's been robbing you blind," Phyllis said, sliding her summary report across the table, and getting sloppy about it. These home goods charges? She didn't even bother hiding them. Third priority, the tenant situation. My property manager called December 15th. That tenant at 349 Cypress still hasn't responded to the pay or quit notice. It's been 10 days. Want me to file the summary ejectment? North Carolina's eviction process is straightforward. Landlord files in magistrate court after proper notice. Court issues a summons. Tenant gets a hearing date. Filing fee is about $100. Takes maybe 15 minutes at the courthouse. File it, I said. But hold off on serving the summons until after the recall election. I'll tell you when. I wanted the timing perfect. Fourth priority, community engagement. The Nguyen's created a Pinecrest Truth page on Instagram and Facebook. Posted side-by-side comparisons. Brenda's friends with unpainted fences and RVs parked for months, 0 citations, versus immaculate properties belonging to me, Iris, and other harassment targets. Violation notices galore. The posts went semi-viral in Charlotte area HOA groups. Local TV news, WCNC, reached out for an interview. I declined. Not yet. Timing was everything. Fifth priority, the recall election itself. We scheduled it for January 15th, exactly 30 days after filing the petition. Hired an independent monitor, a retired paralegal named Patricia, who'd overseen union elections for 20 years. No stake in the outcome, just there to ensure everything ran clean. Dell agreed to run for president, Iris for treasurer. Marcus, a neutral retired teacher who'd kept his head down until the financial revelations, agreed to run for secretary. We printed campaign literature, professional, simple, transparency, accountability, community. Brenda's counter-campaign was a single photocopied sheet. Don't let outsiders destroy our neighborhood. Meanwhile, Brenda made moves of her own. Through leaks from her book club circle, one member's husband played poker with Dell. We learned she'd hired a private investigator. Her nephew, unlicensed, charging her $200 a day to dig up dirt on me. He found nothing. Honorable discharge, clean credit, taxes paid, 0 criminal history. The most exciting thing in my background was a speeding ticket from 2018. She also tried to amend the CCNRs via emergency board resolution to ban rentals retroactively. Consuela shut that down immediately. CCNR amendments require a 75% supermajority vote of all owners. A board can't just change the rules unilaterally. Christmas week, things got quiet. Too quiet. I decorated my house, white lights, simple wreath, and received an anonymous card in my mailbox. Thank you for standing up. A grateful neighbor. The handwriting was shaky, probably Iris. The card's embossed snowflake caught the porch light as I turned it over. Same day, Brenda's lawyer sent another threatening letter. Defamation suit if I continued spreading lies about Ms. Kulwich's character. I framed it, hung it in my garage next to my Marine Corps flag. By this point, her legal threats were like spam emails. I just archived them and moved on. January 14th, the night before the election, I couldn't sleep. Lay in bed listening to winter wind rattle the windows. Digital clock glowing 3:47 a.m. This had stopped being about my truck 6 months ago. Now it was about every person Brenda had bullied, every family she'd pushed, every elderly homeowner she'd targeted for her flipping scheme. I checked my Ring camera. The street quiet, no sabotage attempts. Tomorrow we'd find out if democracy still worked in a place as small as an HOA. January 3rd, I woke to find my truck keyed. Deep scratches carved down the entire driver's side, metal showing through the blue paint like exposed bone. I stood there in the cold morning air, breath fogging, fingers tracing the gouges. Whoever did it had taken their time. The lines were deliberate, angry, personal. My neighbor's Ring doorbell caught partial footage. A dark sedan, 2 a.m., driver indistinct in a hoodie. Not enough for prosecution, but enough to know it wasn't random. I filed a police report. The officer was sympathetic, but realistic. Without clear footage or witnesses, it's tough. Could have been kids, could have been someone with a grudge. It was someone with a grudge, I said. I didn't publicly accuse Brenda. Didn't need to. But I installed 6 security cameras that afternoon. Every angle of my property, uploading to cloud storage. If she wanted to play dirty, I'd have receipts. 2 days later, the smear campaign escalated. Brenda printed new flyers, distributed January 5th and 6th to every mailbox. Investor threatens our safety. She claimed my rental properties housed unvetted criminals and implied they were drug dens. Zero evidence, just fear-mongering designed to turn neighbors against me. The Nguyen's posted rebuttals immediately. Photos of my well-maintained properties, testimonials from my tenants, all professionals, all grateful for affordable, clean housing. But some longtime residents who didn't follow social media started believing her. I got cold shoulders at the grocery store. One woman I'd waved to for 3 years crossed the street to avoid me. Worse, my tenant, who's a teacher, called me. My principal asked if I lived in a problem property. "Mr. Garrett, this is affecting my job." That's when it became real. Brenda wasn't just attacking me anymore. She was hurting innocent people to get to me. January 8th, my property manager called. "Your tenant at 349 Cypress hasn't responded to the pay or quit notice. 3 months rent overdue now. That's $5,550. Want me to proceed with eviction?" "Yes, file in magistrate court. Standard summary ejectment, but don't serve her with the summons yet. I'll tell you when." The timing had to be perfect. January 10th, Brenda made her most desperate move yet. She showed up at Dell's house with an envelope. His wife Marlene was home, heard everything through the screen door while Dell stood on the porch. Brenda offered him $2,000 cash, actual bills in her hand, to withdraw from the election and endorse her publicly. Dell, former union steward, incorruptible to his core, told her to get off his property. She tried to sweeten it. "Think of it as consulting fees. Neighborhood improvement advisor." "Ma'am," Dell said, voice hard, "you need to leave, now." She left the cash envelope on his porch railing and walked away. Dell called me immediately. "You're not going to believe what just happened." Marlene signed an affidavit detailing the entire conversation. Date, time, exact words, the cash amount. Consuela filed it with the magistrate court as supporting evidence for potential criminal charges and submitted it to the Real Estate Commission as another ethics violation. Bribery, embezzlement, fraud, harassment. Brenda was racking up charges like speeding tickets. January 12th, 3 days before the election, I had a chance encounter that almost broke my discipline. I was at the gas station filling up when Brenda pulled into the pump opposite mine. The smell of gasoline hung heavy in the cold air, mixing with her overpowering perfume. She got out, saw me, and her whole body went rigid. Then, loud enough for other customers to hear, "You've ruined this neighborhood. I hope you're proud of yourself." I didn't look up from the pump, just kept watching the numbers tick higher. "You're a parasite," she continued, voice shaking. "You don't even live in half those houses. You're just using us." I finished pumping, replaced the nozzle, finally looked at her. "And you don't even own yours," I said quietly. She froze, face going white, then red. Her hands trembled as she fumbled her credit card at the pump. She knew that I knew. I got in my truck and drove away, watching her in the rearview mirror, standing there alone, card still in her shaking hand. The next day, January 13th, Brenda sent an email to all residents claiming the election was postponed due to procedural errors. Complete fabrication. Patricia, our independent monitor, immediately sent a correction. "Election proceeds as scheduled, January 15th, 6 p.m. Ignore all misinformation." That night, WCNC aired their segment. 4 minutes of devastating coverage. The fake eviction notice, financial discrepancies, interviews with Iris and me. The reporter, Kendra, had done her homework. The clip went viral. 300,000 views in 18 hours. At 11:30 p.m., Brenda posted an unhinged Facebook rant, all caps, typos, calling me a liar and thief and destroyer. Threatened to expose the real truth, but provided nothing except vitriol. Even her book club friends started backing away quietly. I slept fine that night, let her spiral, let her rage. Because tomorrow, the community would vote, and the day after that, if necessary, a sheriff's deputy would serve her with eviction papers. Poetic justice had never felt so tangible. January 15th, Election Day. At 4 p.m., exactly 2 hours before polls opened, a sheriff's deputy knocked on Brenda's door at 349 Cypress Lane. I didn't coordinate the timing, pure coincidence. Beautiful poetry. The magistrate court had processed my eviction filing, issued the summons, and the sheriff's civil division served it according to their schedule. But the timing couldn't have been more perfect. Dell texted me a screenshot from the neighborhood watch group. Just saw a cop car at Brenda's. Anyone know what's happening? I didn't respond, just smiled. Brenda knew what it was the moment she saw the uniform. I imagined her opening that envelope, reading, "Notice to appear. Summary ejectment action," seeing my LLC's name as plaintiff, realizing that the man she'd tried to evict with a fake notice was now legally evicting her. An hour later, she arrived at the clubhouse early. I was already there, helping Patricia set up the ballot box and voter registration table. Brenda looked like she hadn't slept in days. Hair less perfectly styled, makeup heavier than usual, trying to hide exhaustion, hands clutching her purse like a shield. She saw me and her jaw tightened. Didn't say a word, just sat at the head table, staring straight ahead. By 6 p.m., the clubhouse was packed. 89 residents, a record that would probably never be broken. Bodies crammed into a space meant for 40, the smell of too many people mixing with burnt coffee and someone's fried chicken takeout. WCNC's camera sat in the back corner. Kendra had gotten permission to film for a follow-up segment. Patricia, our monitor, called the meeting to order, not Brenda. The transition of power was already happening even before votes were counted. Members will vote first, Patricia announced. Candidates may make brief statements afterward while ballots are tallied. Brenda tried to object. As current president, I should... Ms. Kulwich, you're a candidate now, not a presiding officer. Please take your seat. The look on Brenda's face could have curdled milk. Voting took 30 minutes. Paper ballots, privacy screens, the satisfying sound of folded paper dropping into the locked box. Democracy in its purest, smallest form. While the count happened in a side room, Patricia plus 3 volunteer witnesses. Tension simmered in the main space. Brenda sat rigid, arms crossed. Her book club friends clustered around her, whispering reassurances that sounded hollow even from across the room. Dell caught my eye, gave a subtle nod. We'd done everything we could, now it was up to the community. Finally, Brenda couldn't contain herself anymore. She stood, demanded the floor. Patricia sighed. Ms. Kulwich, we're still counting. Before results are announced, these people deserve to know who they're really electing. She pointed at me, finger shaking. He's a slumlord, an absentee investor who doesn't care about this community. Just profit. I stood slowly. I'd like to respond to that. Patricia nodded. I walked to the front, turned to face the crowd. 89 faces, some supportive, some hostile, most just curious. Brenda's partially right, I said. I do own rental properties here, 6 of them. I bought them as investments, yes. But I also bought them because I believe in this neighborhood. I keep them maintained. My tenants are good people, teachers, nurses, families. I take pride in providing quality housing. Pulled out a folder from my bag. But here's what Brenda didn't mention. I opened the folder, held up a lease agreement. She rents one of those properties. From me. Has for the past 14 months. The room went dead silent. You could have heard a pin drop on that linoleum floor. 349 Cypress Lane, I continued. Brenda's been my tenant since May 2023. Currently 3 months behind on rent. $5,550 in arrears. And as of 4 p.m. today, pulled out the second document. She was served with an eviction summons, a real one this time. Legal, proper, filed in magistrate court under North Carolina summary ejectment law. The silence shattered. Gasps, shouts, scattered laughter, some nervous, some vindicated. Brenda's face went purple. That's illegal. Retaliation. You can't... It's not retaliation, I said calmly. It's business. You breached your lease. Non-payment of rent and conducting unauthorized business from the premises. Every HOA meeting you hosted at your dining room table violated the lease terms. This eviction is completely lawful. Consuela stood from the back. I've reviewed the filing. It's textbook proper. Sheriff's already served it. Ms. Kulwich has a court date. Brenda opened her mouth, closed it. Tears streamed down her face, ruining her careful makeup. Black mascara tracked down her cheeks. You planned this, she choked out. You orchestrated. I responded to your actions, I said. Every step of the way. You wanted to play eviction games with fake notices. So I showed you what a real eviction process looks like. She grabbed her purse, knocked her chair over, and ran for the door. The sound of her heels on linoleum, then the slam of the exit, echoed through the stunned silence. Nobody followed her, not even her book club friends. Patricia banged her gavel. Order, please. We have results. The room settled, electric with anticipation. President, Dell, 71 votes. Brenda Kulwich, 8 votes. Treasurer, Iris, 68 votes. Secretary, Marcus, 64 votes. Applause erupted. People stood, cheering, some wiping tears. Dell took the gavel from Patricia, raised it high. First order of business. I move we rescind all violation notices from the past 12 months and refund any fines paid. Aye! The response was thunderous. Iris. I move we hire an independent auditor and report findings within 60 days. Another unanimous aye. I stayed in the back watching the community reclaim itself. This was their victory as much as mine. Outside in the parking lot afterward, cold January air biting, neighbors thanked me, shook my hand, hugged me. Iris, eyes shining. You gave us our neighborhood back. We did it together, I said. Dell clapped my shoulder. Drinks this weekend. You earned it, Marine. I stood alone for a moment after everyone left, looking at the clubhouse. Warm light spilling from windows, the building that had been Brenda's fortress, now belonging to the people again. This is what community should feel like. Brenda moved out of 349 Cypress Lane by the court deadline, February 15th, avoiding the formal eviction hearing. She left the place trashed, holes punched in drywall, carpet stained beyond cleaning, broken appliances. I kept her security deposit and billed her for an additional $2,800 in damages. She never paid. Didn't matter. Some victories aren't about money. The independent audit completed February 28th, confirming exactly what Phyllis had found. $77,000 in misappropriated funds. The new board filed a police report. The DA declined to prosecute. White-collar crime, low priority, restitution unlikely. But they filed a civil suit against Brenda and her brother Kenneth. The case settled in June. Kenneth's landscaping company had actual assets. He repaid $40,000 to avoid criminal charges. Brenda declared bankruptcy and paid nothing. She'd already disappeared by then anyway. Last anyone heard, she'd moved to Florida, probably found some other community to terrorize. But Pinecrest Meadows? We started healing. The new board's first 90 days were transformative. Dues dropped 15% once we cut out the embezzlement overhead. Violation enforcement got a complete overhaul. Photographic evidence required, 30-day cure periods, actual appeals process with witnesses and documentation. In April, we organized a community work day. 60 residents showed up with paintbrushes and work gloves. We painted the clubhouse, mulched common areas, planted native wildflowers in the entrance beds, Iris's idea, for the pollinators. The smell of fresh mulch and paint mixed with spring air, kids running around, neighbors actually talking to each other. It felt like a neighborhood again. I updated all 6 rental leases with something I called the HOA Anti-Harassment Addendum. If the HOA targeted any tenant with frivolous violations, I'd handle all appeals at my expense. Word spread. Other investor owners in the community started adopting the same language. By late March, I was sitting on my porch again, same spot as that November morning when Brenda slapped the fake eviction notice on my chest. But everything felt different now. The scent of dogwood blossoms hung in warm air, the sound of kids playing basketball 3 houses down, the Nguyen's hoop no longer a violation, a neighbor waving from across the street, simple things, normal things, things that should have been there all along. In May, Dell had an idea. Turn the recovered $40,000 from Kenneth's settlement into something good. The board voted unanimously to create the Pinecrest Community Fund, college scholarships for neighborhood kids, home repair assistance for elderly or disabled residents. I donated $10,000 seed money. Felt right. First scholarship went to a high school senior in August, daughter of a single mom who rented one of my properties. Full ride to UNC Charlotte engineering program. The award ceremony was at the clubhouse, the girl's tearful thank you speech, her mom sobbing in the front row. I sat in the back, blinking hard, throat tight. This is what HOAs should do. Iris proposed converting an unused HOA lot into a pollinator meadow and community garden. The board approved immediately. Ribbon cutting in September, 60 residents, local news coverage, kids running through waist-high wildflowers while Dell's raised garden beds stood ready for planting. The headline read, HOA transforms after scandal into model community. WCNC did a follow-up segment in October, Where Are They Now? Kendra interviewed me, Dell, and Iris. Showed the before and after, violation notices versus community gardens, fear versus hope. I told the camera, HOAs aren't inherently bad, but they need transparency, accountability, and residents willing to stand up when things go wrong. The segment won a regional Emmy. I still get messages, emails, Facebook DMs from HOA victims nationwide, people fighting their own Brendas, desperate for advice. Last September, someone from Raleigh reached out with a nearly identical situation, investor harassed by a corrupt board. I spent a weekend writing a detailed guide, how to fight HOA overreach, documentation strategies, legal steps, state-by-state resources. Posted it free online, 40,000 downloads in the first month. But that's a story for another time. January 15th, 2025, exactly 1 year after the election, I hosted an open house at my place. Casual drop-in, 4 to 8 p.m. The smell of chili simmering, cornbread baking, Iris's gingerbread cookies, now an annual tradition. My living room packed with 30-plus neighbors, kids underfoot, Dell manning the chili station, classic rock playing low. Dell raised his beer bottle. To Garrett, for having the guts to say enough. The crowd echoed, "To Garrett!" I felt my throat tighten, eyes stinging. To all of us. We took our neighborhood back together, Iris added, voice soft but firm, and made it better than before. Standing there in my living room, warm hugs, firm handshakes, someone's toddler grabbing my pant leg, I realized something. This fight was never really about trucks or grass height or eviction notices. It was about dignity, about the right to live in peace without petty tyrants making your life hell. And we won. So here's what I want you to take away from this. If you're dealing with an out-of-control HOA, remember, document everything. Photos, timestamps, emails. You can't fight what you can't prove. Know your state's laws. Most have provisions for record access, recall elections, dispute resolution. Google your state plus HOA statute and read the actual law. Find allies. You're not alone in your neighborhood. Others are suffering too. Power in numbers. Use public records. Tax filings, property records, meeting minutes, most are public. Use them. Stay calm. Bullies want you to blow up so they can paint you as the problem. Stay professional, stay factual, stay relentless, and never make it personal. This isn't revenge, it's justice. Now I want to hear from you. Drop a comment below with your craziest HOA story. What's the most ridiculous thing you've been fined for? What violation notice still makes you laugh or rage? And if you're currently fighting an HOA nightmare, let me know. Maybe we can feature your story and help you win. If this story gave you that justice satisfaction you came here for, hit that subscribe button. We cover everything from HOA battles to landlord-tenant wins to small claims court victories. Ring the bell so you don't miss the next one, because trust me, the stories get wilder from here. Until next time, know your rights, stand your ground, and never let the Karens win. Peace.